I loved and worshipped him with all my heart. Our story happened in the kingdom of Tatum, a land ruled by deep traditions and ancient laws. After the king went missing, which meant he was no more, an evil queen was left behind to reign alone. It was said in Tatum that any man who dared to rule beside her would not survive the same night he ascended the throne and completed the royal rites with her, and truly, every man who tried never lived to see the next day. In the kingdom of Tatum, tradition demanded that a new king must first perform the ritual of cleansing. This ritual was done by sharing the first night with the queen, who was the wife of the late king whose reign had ended by 38. Only after that night would the queen confirm that the final rites had been completed and that the man was now the rightful king. Without her confirmation, no one was accepted as ruler. Sharing that night with her meant gaining access to all the secret places of power in the kingdom. If the late king had many wives, it was his first wife that mattered most. She became the oracle, the voice that confirmed kingship and sealed authority. The first man who ascended the throne lost his life the very next day after performing the rites with the queen. The second met the same fate. The third also did not survive. Fear spread across the land, but no one knew the truth. The queen was evil, a witch sitting on the throne and ruling with dark powers. She was responsible for the death of the late king, but the entire kingdom remained blind to her wickedness. Everything changed the day the queen set her eyes on my husband. "Who are you?" she asked him. "I am Jifo, my queen," he answered respectfully. "Jifo." The queen called his name again, and he replied, "My queen, you will reign beside me," she said boldly. "You will be my king," instead of allowing the gods or tradition to choose. She chose her own king, charmed by his handsome looks and strong presence. But my husband surprised her. "I am married, your majesty," he said calmly. "Tonight, I want you by my side," she replied. "Tell your wife she may choose any other man to marry. Let her make her choice, and I shall make that man her husband." But my husband refused to go see the queen that night. Angered by his refusal, she summoned him to the palace the next day. "Why didn't you show up?" she demanded. "I cannot disappoint my wife, my queen," he replied. "What does she want?" the queen asked sharply. "Tell her I will give it to her. I will assemble all the most handsome men in this land, and she will choose her husband. Bring her to the palace tomorrow." When I was brought before the multitude and asked to choose any man of my choice, my heart was beating fast. I looked around carefully and found the man my heart settled on, the one who made my heart race. Without fear, I walked forward and made my choice. There was even handsome princes, merchants, and great men. But I had my own choice. It was my only choice. This is the man I want to marry. Who do you think she has chosen? Even my husband was shocked that despite all the warnings and the heavy odds, I still decided to choose him again as my husband. Even in my second life, I will still choose him as my husband. The queen became furious and ordered my husband and me to follow her to the royal garden. There were only 3 of us. The garden was quiet, filled with tall trees and strange flowers that looked like they were watching us. When we finally stopped, the queen turned to me and said, "Will you allow me to make your husband my king? Or should I transform him into one of these trees in my garden?" I knew deep down that no ordinary human had such powers, but the queen's eyes told me she was not joking. Without thinking twice, and with tears already forming in my eyes, I replied, "I would rather love him and remain married to him as a tree than let him belong to another woman." The queen laughed softly and asked again, "So you accept that I turn him into a tree and decorate my garden with him, instead of letting him be my husband?" "Yes, your majesty," I replied firmly, though my heart was breaking. "Then let your wish become reality." She raised her hand gently, and in a blink, My husband turned into a tree right before my eyes. I screamed and cried until my strength failed me. From that very day, that tree became my life. Every dry season, I watered it carefully so it would not dry up. I cleaned around it, spoke to it, and poured out my heart because that tree was my husband. I chose to work in the palace without pay just so I could stay close to him. I guarded the tree like my own soul, stopping anyone who tried to touch or cut even a single branch. In my heart, I believed strongly that one day, I would discover the secret that would bring my husband back to life. Until then, I remained married to a tree. Every day, I went to the queen, begging her to reverse what she had done and turn my husband back from a tree into a human being. Each time, she turned me away without mercy. No matter how much I cried or pleaded, her answer was always the same no. One day, out of desperation, I told her I was ready to do anything she wanted, anything at all. If only she would bring my husband back to normal. She looked at me for a long moment, then smiled and said, "Only on one condition." My heart jumped. "Which condition, Your Majesty?" I asked eagerly. She paused, then said slowly, "The day you get married to another man. That same day I will transform him back into a human." That was the moment I understood everything. She had done all this on purpose. Her plan was clear to force me to marry another man so she could finally turn my husband back and then take him for herself. She knew that as long as my husband and I were still married, there was no way she could ever have him. She had turned him into a tree because he refused to marry her, and I made up my mind that no matter what, I would keep my love and loyalty to him. I guarded my heart and refused to give up. To hurt me even more, the queen warned me sternly. She said if I refused to get married and continued coming to her garden, she would send someone to cut the tree down. She accused me of worshipping a tree, even though she knew very well that the tree was my husband, transformed by her own hands. She even gave me a deadline. If I did not get married before that time, the tree would be cut down. One day, as I sat quietly in the garden under the tree, talking to my husband and crying softly, I suddenly saw one of the royal guards approaching with an axe in his hands. My heart nearly stopped. I knew I had to do something. If I didn't, I would lose my husband forever. I stood up quickly and blocked his path, crying and begging him to stop. I told him that he must pass over me first before touching my tree husband. But he shook his head sadly and said, "I cannot disobey the queen. Imagine the pain of seeing someone turn your loved one into a tree and then send someone to cut it down." When he tried coming closer, I stood firmly on his path. I knew I had to speak up. At that point, I could no longer keep quiet. I had to let him understand the weight of what he was about to do. I looked straight into his eyes and said, "You might think you are just a woodcutter doing your job, but if you cut down this tree, my husband's life will be on your conscience. You will carry the blame forever. This is not firewood, and it is not an ordinary tree. This tree is my husband." The man froze in confusion. "I don't understand," he replied. "I was ordered by the queen to bring this very tree to the palace at all costs. No one is supposed to stop me." I took a deep breath and said calmly, "If you allow me, I will explain why she asked for this tree in particular. Please, cut down another tree that looks like this one and take it to her. Tell her it is the same tree she ordered." He paused, curiosity written all over his face. "How did this tree become your husband?" he asked. When he said that, I began recounting everything that had happened. I told him about the queen, her wicked jealousy, and the curse she placed on my husband. After listening quietly, he asked one last question. "And who was your husband?" I corrected him immediately. "Please, my husband was not. He is," I said firmly, because he spoke of him in the past. He nodded and repeated, "Who is your husband?" "My husband's name is Workom." He looked shocked. "Which Workom?" The same one who refused to reign with your queen, I replied. What? He exclaimed. But she is our queen, not mine. From the day she turned my husband into a tree, she stopped being my queen. She is evil, I said. He tried to speak again but suddenly stopped. Then he shouted, Welcome, you mooey. He stared at me in disbelief. Is it the same man who stood by the queen and refused her? Yes, I answered. Tears filled his eyes. He is my cousin, he said softly. So the queen sent me to destroy my own lineage. I will not do such a thing. He then searched around and found another tree that looked almost exactly like the one I was guarding. He cut it down and carried it to the palace instead. I left the forest afterward and later discovered that the king believed his report. I went to the palace sobbing and pretending to mourn, just to blind the queen's eyes. In truth, I was crying for my lost my beloved husband, but I knew all hope was not gone. I still had a chance to reverse the magic. My next mission was clear. I had to find the secret that would break the spell. That night, sleep refused to come to me. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw Welcome standing tall in the forest, roots gripping the earth where his feet once were, his arms stretched into branches, his voice trapped inside bark and silence. I felt his pain even without hearing a sound. Love has a way of speaking where words fail. At dawn, I rose and wrapped myself in a dark cloak. There was only one place left to seek answers, the old seer of Tatum. She lived beyond the red hills, where no bird sang and no child dared to play. People said she saw truth the way others saw shadows. Many feared her. I had nothing left to fear. When I arrived, she was already waiting, seated before her hut as though she had known I was coming. You are married to a tree, she said before I spoke. My knees weakened. Yes, I whispered, and I've come to bring him back. She studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. The queen's magic is ancient, she said. It binds flesh to earth and spirit to wood. Such spells do not break easily, but they can be broken, I insisted. Yes, she replied, but not without sacrifice. My heart tightened. Tell me what I must do. The seer leaned closer. To reverse the spell, 3 things are required, she said. First, the tears of true love must fall on the roots of the tree at midnight, for 7 nights without fail. Second, the blood of the one who cast the curse must touch the bark willingly or not. And third, she paused, her voice dropping. The cursed must choose to return. Magic cannot force a soul that has accepted its fate. I felt both hope and fear rise within me. But how can he choose, I asked, when he cannot speak? She smiled faintly. Trees hear more than humans think. That very evening, I began. Each night, I returned to the forest when the moon climbed high. I knelt at Welcome's roots, pressing my forehead to the earth, whispering his name again and again. My tears soaked the soil, and sometimes, just sometimes, I felt the wind stir as though answering me. By the 4th night, rumors reached the palace. The queen sent for me. You visit the forest often, she said, her eyes sharp as blades. Are you mourning or plotting? I mourn my husband, I replied calmly. Even trees deserve tears. She smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. Be careful, she warned. Some roots hide snakes. I bowed and left, my heart pounding. She was watching now. I needed her blood, but how do you draw blood from a queen guarded by shadows? Fate answered sooner than I expected. During a royal festival, as she danced around the sacred fire, a thorn from the ceremonial crown pierced her finger. Blood spilled just a drop onto the earth. I moved swiftly. Before anyone noticed, I pressed a strip of cloth into the soil where her blood had fallen, and hid it beneath my robe. That night, I returned to Welcome. I pressed the blood-stained cloth against his bark. The tree shuddered. For the first time, I heard it a low creak, like a breath trying to remember itself. Welcome, I whispered, tears streaming. If you can hear me, choose me, choose life, choose us. The wind rose violently, leaves trembling like 1,000 whispered words. On the 7th night, the forest was unnaturally still. I poured out my heart beside him, my fears, my regrets, my love. I told him I would accept him as tree or man, rooted or walking, as long as his soul remained mine. Then the ground shook. Cracks spread across the bark, light seeping through like dawn through broken doors. The roots withdrew, the branches bent inward, and with a sound like thunder breaking its own silence, Workham fell, not as wood, but as flesh. I caught him as he collapsed into my arms, breathing, warm, alive. At that same moment, in the palace, the queen screamed. Her power shattered. The spell rebounded upon her, and by morning, the throne of Tatum stood empty once more. Workham never ruled. Neither did I ask him to. We left Tatum quietly, choosing a life far from crowns and curses. Yet sometimes when the wind moves gently through trees, he pauses, listening, and I smile, because love, once rooted, can never truly be cut down.